story their lives with schools, each other, and broader ecologies? What are the tensions, and how does identifying them help map possibilities for struggle and change? And freedom. How might movements convey hopes, aspirations, mourning, and efforts to end suffering? How do they articulate and organize for freedom and self-determination? Today's agenda captures the essence of these three overarching concepts and questions. Keeping with the theme of memory, in our first session, Embodied Pedagogies, Memory, Mothering, and Making Through Grief, mothers who have lost their children to state violence draw upon the educational work of remembering to support the mapping of freer futures. How do we learn from their grief and work? And how can the work of remembering chart our path forward? In the following session, Freedom Now, a dialogue on abolition in education, it will engage the deep tradition of abolitionism and place its knowledges in educational contexts to help us imagine what educational freedom might require of us. Our final session for the day focuses on futures through youth perspectives and interrogates the connections between schools and state violence as articulated by youth. How do they think and work toward freer futures? And how do they describe the problems of schools and schooling? We ask our participants to closely study the ideas, research, and perspectives shared, to track themes and patterns, form questions, and join smaller, facilitated study groups to share questions and work across sites to map possibilities for transformative institutional practice and change. Together, we will map educational coordinates for justice and freedom beyond their usual narrow framing. But before we get into the action, we have messages from Dr. Valerie Kinlock, Dean of the School of Education at the University of Pittsburgh, and Dr. T. Elon Dancy, the Executive Director and Chief Research Scientist of the Center for Urban Education. I will first introduce Dean Kinlock. Dr. Valerie Kinlock began her tenure as the Renee and Richard Goldman Dean of the University of Pittsburgh School of Education in July of 2017, and immediately made her mark on the school, university, and community with her passion for education, learning, and engagement. Dean Kinlock has dedicated herself to strengthening the school's commitments to urban education, equity and justice, diversity and inclusion, and community engagement, while also enhancing school culture and broadening alumni participation. A highly respected educator and scholar, Dean Kinlock's areas of research focus on the literacies, languages, cultures, and community engagements of youth and adults, both inside and outside of schools. And now, a message from our Dean, Dr. Valerie Kinlock.
Hi, I am Valerie Kinlock, the Renee and Richard Goldman Endowed Dean and a professor in the School of Education at the University of Pittsburgh. And I am thrilled to have an opportunity to welcome you to this year's Center for Urban Education's Summer Educators Forum. So welcome. Thank you for joining us and really thinking deeply with us about this year's theme, 20 years of the Center for Urban Education, Memory, Futures, and Freedom. And as you are well aware, this theme for the summer of 2023 emphasizes not just the significance of memory, futures, and freedom when we think about life, when we think about educational practice, and research, and when we think about collective work. It also helps us to think deeply about our responsibility being in community with other people. And so as we think about the Center for Urban Education's 20th year, this year in 2023, I ask that you think about what does it mean to have a future that is hopeful, that is full of freedom, that allows us to remember our past as we think about our present and as we forge the type of futures that we rightfully deserve and should be entitled to live. I also want to ask you to think with me and with others about what is it that you remember about your own experiences within educational systems, within community spaces, with groups of people who are thinking deeply about the present moments that we are in as connected to our past moments. And those moments may be moments of non-freedom. Those moments might also be moments of hostility and oppression, of violence. Those moments might also be experiences that we have had with other people that have not been humanizing, that have not been welcoming, and hence not safe. When we think about those memories, how do we begin to shape those memories into the desires that we have to live with and amongst other people as we think deeply and work to implement structures that are truly equitable, that are about social equality, political freedoms, and the rights of all of us, particularly people who look like me. And so I invite you into this conference, into the conversations that you will have. And as I invite you in, I'm thinking about words from Toni Morrison, for example, and I want to put those words here in this space. So Toni Morrison tells us, about distraction and about responsibility, about the work that we should be committed to. And she talks about these things in various ways. This particular passage is about the white gaze. And she says, and I quote, "As though our lives have no meaning and no depth without the white gaze." She says, I've spent my entire writing life trying to make sure that the white gaze was not the dominant one in any of my books, end of quote. I bring Toni Morrison's words into my introductory remarks here today because for me, she reminds me, as we think about, for example, this theme of memory, futures, and freedom, we have to also think about the gaze that oftentimes we are responding to, the gaze that serves as nothing more than distraction, the gaze that serves as nothing more than an oppressive force by which we are oftentimes asked to remake our work, our lives, and the work that we do with other people across the world into responses to the white gaze, when in fact, our work, our lives, and the work that we do with other people should in fact be the responsibility of working for freedom, of living in a world of educational equity and equality, and not as a response to the white gaze. I also am thinking here today about the extraordinary contributions of educator Mary McLeod Bethune. And I want to read some words from Mary McLeod Bethune that I have been thinking about as I engage in the type of work I do here in the School of Education as a dean, but also the type of work that I am committed to doing across the world. And it's Mary McLeod Bethune who says that I leave you finally a responsibility to our young people. The world around us really belongs to youth, for youth will take over its future management. She continues, our children must never lose their zeal for building a better world. And she goes on to talk about the powerful potential in our young people and how we ourselves, quote, must have the courage to change old ideas and practices so that we may direct their power toward good ends, end of quote. So what Mary McLeod Bethune offers is an opportunity for us to think about how we live in the world, how we uphold a responsibility to young people, regardless of what the forces may be that are working against us, that would have us question our lives, our literacies, the very essence of who we are in community with each other. So how do we elevate the voices of young people? How do we remember the voices and the lives of young people as we understand that they are fundamentally key and important to the work of coalition building and of revolutions and of movements for freedom? And that's, for example, why we're here today, to think about freedom. And in the Center for Urban Education, the questions that come to mind when we talk about freedom, how might these very movements and revolutions convey hopes and aspirations, mournings, and efforts to end human suffering? How do they in fact articulate and organize for freedom and self-determination as we work against the very structures and systems and processes and policies that are inequitable, that seek to limit our movement, as June Jordan would say, across the globe. How do we understand freedom as connected to memory, as connected to future? And when we think about future, let me highlight this part here. It is the question of thinking about educational possibilities amidst catastrophe. It is about thinking about the kinds of freedom practices that actually create the types of future that we rightfully deserve, and those coming after us are rightfully deserving of. We have to also think about the tensions. Like, how might the tensions, the struggles, the things that might seem impossible lend themselves to the types of futures that we are trying to build with each other? And in building those futures, we have to ask questions of who is in, who has not been in, who has not been represented, and for what reasons, as we build the type of critical inclusivity that I believe that we should have. And so from someone like a Toni Morrison, who warns us, do not be responding to the white gaze. Do not let other people's actions serve as distractions from the type of freedom work and freedom writing that we need to engage in. To someone like a Mary McLeod Bethune, who came out explicitly and said, how do we elevate and amplify the voices, the lives, the very presence of young people, particularly when we are talking about movements, revolutions, and coalition building. Taken together, I am excited to say that the work happening in the Center for Urban Education under the executive directorship of T.E. Lon Dancy and all of our colleagues connected to the center, that's the work that we need to continue to do in order to ensure that the type of world that we currently have as connected to the type of world that we need to have in the future gets us beyond freedom dreaming to the enactment of freedom in all walks of life. And so I leave you with this. This is directly connected to our School of Education. My colleagues here in the school know that I will read and recite and talk about the mission vision of our school in any opportunity that I am given. And I want to do that here today. I want you to think about Toni Morrison on the one hand. I also want you to think about Mary McLeod Bethune on the other hand. And I want you to also think about, why are you here today? And hopefully this mission vision resonates with you, as I hope it resonates with the theme of this year's Summer Educators Forum. So our mission vision in the School of Education reads, we ignite learning. We strive for well-being for all. We teach. We commit to students, family, and community success. We commit to educational equity. We advocate. We work for justice. We cultivate relationships. We forge engaged partnerships. We collaborate. We learn with and from communities. We innovate and agitate. We pursue and produce knowledge. We research. We disrupt and transform in equitable educational structures. We approach learning as intertwined with health, wellness, and human development. We address how national, global, social, and technological change impacts learning. We shape practice and policy. We teach with and for dignity. We think, we dream, we lead with integrity. We are the School of Education at the University of Pittsburgh. And that's a lot of we. And the purpose is that in order to engage in freedom thinking, freedom dreaming, and freedom implementation, in order for us to think about memory, futures, and freedom, we have to work as a collective. We have to think about ways of igniting and reigniting learning, but we also have to commit to disrupting and transforming inequitable educational structures that are harmful at best, or at worst, I should say, for people within school systems, within communities, across the world. And that is the work that we are committed to doing here in the School of Education. And I really know that that is the work that is committed from the colleagues I have in the Center for Urban Education. So once again, I thank you for being here. I thank you for attending this experience because it's going to be a rich critical experience. And my hope is that you will go back to wherever you are joining us from, and you will take the lessons from the Summer Educators Forum with you as you go back into classrooms and community spaces and nonprofit organizations, wherever you might be, and you join us as we think deeply about memory, about futures, and always, always about freedom. So once again, I am Valerie Kenlock, and welcome to this summer's forum. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dean Kenlock, for your thoughtful opening remarks and for bringing Toni Morrison, Mary McLeod Bethune into our week. And thank you for reminding us about the mission and vision of the University of Pittsburgh School of Education. Next, I will introduce our Center Director, Dr. T. Elon Dancy. Dr. Dancy was appointed the third Helen S. Faison Endowed Chair, Executive Director, and Chief Research Scientist of the Center for Urban Education in the University of Pittsburgh School of Education in July of 2018. He holds affiliate faculty appointments in Africana Studies and Women's, Gender, and Sexuality Studies, and serves as co-principal investigator of the Pitt Ed Justice Collective, a 3-year working group at the School of Education that is engaged in anti-racist, justice-directed initiatives with students, staff, faculty, alumni, families, youth, and district and community partners. Dr. Dancy served a term as the Pitt School of Education's Associate Dean for Equity and Justice, collaboratively establishing the school's signature initiatives, study groups, and faculty pedagogy workshops. Dr. Dancy's tenure in the Center for Urban Education seeks to anchor the center's scholarly and service projects within Black and Indigenous knowledge traditions, political education, and collaborative community-based praxis. And now, some opening words from our Center Director, Dr. T. Elon Dancy.
Thank you, Chris, for that introduction. Good morning and welcome to our School of Education's Center for Urban Education Summer Educator Forum, or CUESEF 2023. For those who are returning, welcome back. And for those who are new to the Summer Educator Forum, we are delighted you have joined us. With this year's CUESEF, we celebrate 20 years of our Center for Urban Education. As we reflect on all we have accomplished during this time, as well as work to do, we necessarily focus on the power of memory as a guiding text for how we might study our educational practices and the principles embedded within these practices to forge futures. Our theme is fitting, as our forum is happening at the nexus of meaningful anniversaries. I just highlighted the center's anniversary, but we also remember that just yesterday marked the 5-year anniversary of the shooting death of Antoine Rose II, a 17-year-old Pittsburgh youth remembered by his mother, Michelle Kinney, as multi-talented and funny, and by his peers as infinitely kind and generous. In fact, I had just moved to Pittsburgh to serve as center director at the time he was taken from us, and this crime was the top story. My own personal anniversary as a Pittsburgh resident, therefore, always parallels the length of time Antoine Rose II has been gone from this earthly plane, and I don't think I will ever forget that. Let us also remember that Antoine was killed on Juneteenth, which was also yesterday, and is a yearly reminder that we must devote ourselves to the work of liberation. We hope that by the end of this forum, you will be motivated to commit to continued study of how we might forge freer futures from wherever we are and wherever we work. Our dean just invoked Toni Morrison's words in her welcome, and I do the same, but in reflection on her essay, The Site of Memory. Memories map, as Morrison suggests, the connections between us, and the memories within all of us should be, in her words, the subsoil of our work, as they can help us imagine freer futures. And so many of this year's panels, including the one with our mother activists that we are about to engage, our panelists use their lives to expose the horrors of the violence they experience in order to shore up our collective power to fight for freedom. This, you see, is an educational matter. What do our memories teach about the world we inhabit? And what do our lived experiences teach us about the purposes education should serve? What's at stake in efforts to transform the kinds of transactional and violent relations that characterize modern day schooling? What memories, what facts, what truths do we need to spark our imagination? By taking this approach, we explore and consider two worlds, in the words of Morrison, the actual and the possible. This year, we also focus even more closely on the power of youth lives and memories as essential knowledges for forging freer futures. Our last session for the day, in fact, ends with high school youth across Greater Pittsburgh. And tomorrow we ask that you watch 4 of our previous CUESEF or Q Youth panels. We invite you to ask yourself as you watch, what are the features of school and state violence as articulated by youth? How do they think and work toward freer futures? And how do they describe the problems of schools, schooling, and society? We ask you to comment in YouTube with your ideas, questions, and reflections. And now some thanks and recognitions. Borrowing from the late Maya Angelou's writing, I may come here to greet you as one, but I stand as many. So I want to end these remarks in gratitude for the assembly of persons who have worked hard to make this year's CUESEF rich and thoughtful. I'm grateful for my colleagues Sabina Vaught and Kirsten Scott, who thought with me early about a design for this year's forum and have so meaningfully contributed to its coordination. The Center for Urban Education team, comprised of faculty, staff, and students who have supported our planning, who are serving as our forum's facilitators, and who have promoted this conference far and wide. I'm grateful to faculty and student facilitators visiting from other colleges and universities who have invested time and labor preparing the dialogues that shape the forum's plenaries and concurrent panels, particularly Dorothy Roberts from the University of Pennsylvania and Khalid Long from the University of Georgia, who is facilitating a workshop on the August Wilson archives. We thank Fantasy Zellers and her Bounce Limited team for their hard work and care in the production of this forum. We thank the administrators and staff in the School of Education, particularly our Dean, Dr. Valerie Kinlock, and we thank the Kyle Duarte Company for providing more inclusive American Sign Language interpretation. We are deeply grateful for support for this year's CUESEF from the Hines Endowments and our co-sponsorships with the Kinlock Commons for Critical Pedagogy and Leadership, the Western Pennsylvania Writing Project, and Gwen's Girls. And we also acknowledge the University of Pittsburgh Library System, our collaborator in this year's CUESEF August Wilson Workshop. Art is education, and we thank the artists who remind us this year that art is central to movements for justice and liberation. We invited local Pittsburgh artist Ernest Bay to inspire our theme, and we thank him for his trilogy, I and I Too, and The Shame of I and I, which indicts the modern world and its educational institution for the project of indoctrination, in which we seek to access and advance within systems of domination, but do not restructure or transform them. We're also grateful to DJ PVO, which stands for Positive Vibes Only, who has meditated on our theme and has already taken us on a musical journey. And finally, let me remind you that if you are not signed up to receive updates from the Pitt Center for Urban Education, we can fix this easily, hopefully. Please visit our website at q.pitt.edu, that's cue.pitt.edu, click Contact, and complete a very brief form to join our mailing list so you can stay up to date about our events and initiatives. Thanks for being with us this summer. Enjoy CUESEF 2023, 20 years of the Center for Urban Education, Memory, Futures, and Freedom. Back to you, Chris.
Just taking a short pause so ASL can catch up. Right. Thank you, Dr. Dancy, for such thoughtful opening remarks and for reminding us that memory is indeed a necessity as we work to forge freer futures. Now that the stage has been set, we will begin our first session of the day, Embodied Pedagogies, Memory, Mothering, and Making Through Grief. In this conversation, mothers who have lost children to state violence draw upon the educational work of remembering to support the mapping of freer futures. We are so grateful for our panelists' time and commitment to this work. Before we get into the conversation, I'd like to introduce our moderator for this panel, Dr. Dorothy Roberts. Dorothy Roberts is the 14th Penn Integrates Knowledge Professor and George A. Ways University Professor of Law and Sociology at the University of Pennsylvania, with joint appointments in the departments of Africana Studies and Sociology and the Law School, where she is the inaugural Raymond Pace and Sadie Tanner Moselle Alexander Professor of Civil Rights. She is also founding director of the Penn Program on Race, Science, and Society. An internationally acclaimed scholar, public intellectual, and social justice activist, Roberts has written and lectured extensively on the interplay of race, gender, and class inequities in U.S. institutions, and has been a leader in transforming thinking on reproductive justice, child welfare, and bioethics. She is author of the award-winning Killing the Black Body, Race, Reproduction, and the Meaning of Liberty, Shattered Bonds, The Color of Child Welfare, and Fatal Invention, How Science, Politics, and Big Business Recreate Race in the 21st Century, as well as more than 100 articles and book chapters, including Race in the 1619 Project. Her latest book, Torn Apart, How the Child Welfare System Destroys Black Families and How Abolition Can Build a Safer World, culminates more than 2 decades of investigating racism and family policing and calls for a radically reimagined way to support children and their families. Torn Apart was a finalist for an LA Times Book Prize. Dr. Roberts, thank you so much for being in community with us this morning. I'm going to go ahead and hand the floor over to you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you to the prior speakers as well. I am just truly honored to have been asked to moderate this important panel, Embodied Pedagogies, Memory, Mothering, and Making Through Grief. I cannot imagine a more important way to begin our conversation with these 4 courageous mothers who lost a child to state violence. And we are going to draw upon their experiences and educational work of remembering to support mapping freer futures. We'll discuss how do we learn from grief and work. How do these mothers' experiences with carceral institutions help us to think about how we might pursue relations for self-determination and freedom. And we have an hour and a half. And I will ask the audience to leave questions in the chat. If we have enough time, depending on how our conversation goes, at the end, we'll get to as many questions as possible. But first, let me introduce our remarkable panel. And I will introduce the panelists in alphabetical order by their last names. So first is Cleopatra Cowley, who came into the public's eye after the death of her daughter, Hadia Pendleton. Hadia was an honor student who performed at President Obama's second inauguration a week before her death. Since that horrific day, Cleopatra has channeled her pain through working with the nonprofit created in her daughter's honor, Hadia's Promise, which aims to bring attention to urban youth violence and help young people in the local Chicago area and nationally to avoid resorting to firearms to settle their disputes. Next is Michelle Kenny. She is the mother of Antoine Rose II, the 17-year-old shot and killed by East Pittsburgh Police on June 19th, 2018. Michelle established the Antoine Rose II Foundation in honor of her son, Antoine, to continue the work that Antoine was doing during his life on Earth and to advocate for police reform. Next is Tamika Palmer. Tamika Palmer's life changed forever in the early hours of March 13th, 2020, when she received a late night call. I'm so sorry, when she received a late night call. I'm so sorry, I didn't anticipate I would be so moved by these introductions. I apologize. When she received a late night call from her daughter's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, who told her that someone had kicked in the door of Breonna Taylor's apartment and shot her. From that moment on, and as she learned more about the botched police raid that led to Breonna's death, Palmer became a leader in the fight for justice for her daughter and for others. And our fourth panelist is Samaria Rice. Ms. Rice is the founder and CEO of the Tamir Rice Foundation. Under Ms. Rice's leadership, the foundation uplifts the legacy of her son, Tamir Rice, and advocates for youth and families. So I'm going to move on then to a set of questions where we'll explore this theme of memory and mothering and making through grief. So my first question, and maybe we can just go in alphabetical order, again, the way I introduced you. I am the mother of 4 children, and I cannot imagine the pain of losing a child, especially at the hands of state violence. Can each of you please share a memory of something special about your child, and then tell us how you turned your grief into working for a better world? Ms. Cowley, do you want to begin? And then we can just go through the panelists in the order I introduced you.
Absolutely. Are you able to hear me? Just want to check my phone.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So good morning, everyone. And first, I just want to say thank you for including me in this really amazing discussion and exploration. To answer your question, a memory, I'm always thinking of something, right? This will be a mischievous memory, okay? Because I always like to think of the things that show that my child actually lived. So Idea was super wise, just a sharp young lady. She's been like that her whole life. And so this memory comes from middle school. And so she and her friends used to, she loved school. She would never leave school. Okay? It's her thing. So she always had like after school activities, and she was part of volleyball. And then at this particular time, she was part of the basketball team. And so they will always have like after school practice. And so I would just get there late, 6 o'clock, around that time to pick her up. And so this particular day, I was, following a normal routine, and I was going to go pick her up. And she said, and so I called the school and I say, oh yeah, just if you could let Idea know I'm going to be here to pick her up from practice. And she's like, yeah. And the office was like, well, there's no practice today. And I'm like, what? No practice? And she's like, no. And she's like, but she did have detention. And I was like, detention. I'm like, what? So of course, I pick up Idea. She comes, she gets in the car, and I'm like, you said, I thought you told me you had practice today. She's like, no, you thought I had practice today. And I just let you think it. I would get in trouble. I'm like, but you're in trouble now, okay? And so I say little things like that because, people oftentimes want to, we focus on the fact that our kids are no longer with us. And I'm speaking only for myself, but I say it plurally all the time. And therefore it creates a difficult situation when it comes to talking about kids and just having just a regular conversation, because all of my conversation about how deal will be past tense. That's all I got. And so I like to think about those little stories like that, and so many others that that make me smile, because it gives me back, it takes me back to that warm place of mothering her, you know, when I thought I had forever. The second part of your question was what was the second part of your question?
How you took your grief over the loss of your daughter and turned it into your work for a better world.
So that shift was easy, but tough all at the same time, because every day, immediately following her death, I had no voice. I would open my eyes and just scream to the top of my lungs. I had no voice. But I also have always been someone that cares about everybody, right? Probably to my own detriment, just because, you know, I got to make sure everybody else is okay. And I think that's the other mothering part of it. And so I didn't want my friends, and it sounds so cliche, you know, now, because it's happening so much more frequently, this violence, but I didn't want them to understand me. I was fine being in a position where they just couldn't understand, because it's so disgusting, like this idea that you had this dream for your child was dreaming and moving in the direction that we expected them to go, and someone snatched their choice away from them to live, their freedom to live, their freedom to just be in a park. In my situation, my daughter was in a park with our friends in high school, and someone snatched her right to make a proper choice to go to a park, mend relationships, have a good time, and then just go home. So that's how I made it, that transition to like put my voice out there, to put the experience out there, to be imperfect in doing so, because I'm human. I'm not a machine. And I had life that was happening before she was murdered, and maybe people liked, maybe they didn't, who cares at that point. But it's like, I'm a human being. My daughter was number 42 that was murdered that year, which was January 29th, 2013. She was number 42. And number 42 is the statistic, the number that she plays in that. But I'm the statistics mom. And I need people to know that the numbers can kind of separate people from what the real issue is. But when we put skin to it, voice to it, and we bring life to it, showing the perfections, you know, because they always perfect in our life, but also the imperfections, which are absolutely beautiful, because it means you're participating and living and learning. I think it helps give a better people a better opportunity to relate to us and to also see themselves in our experience.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, I thought it was important to start off with a memory of our children. And I'm glad that you shared that mischievous memory. And also thanks for telling us how you made that transition from grief to working for a better world. So Ms. Kenny, do you want to go next?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Originally, I had one memory to share, and then my mind shifted to something else. So I'll tell you something that's never been told before. When Antoine was like 5 years old, I was trying to purchase my first house. And I repainted this house from top to bottom, redid the floors, everything. And as soon as we moved in, the very first day, he drew all over his bedroom walls. And I was so hurt. And I just kept saying to myself, I don't know what's wrong with this kid. He writes on everything. And the deal for that house fell through. So I found another house. We moved, and this time I paint every single wall white. There was no color in the house. Not only did he paint his bedroom with markers and crayons, he painted all the way down my stairs. So in a brand new house that we just closed on, he wrote from the first floor all the way through the second floor, all the way along the wall. And I remember yelling at him saying, boy, if you don't make something out of this artistry that you claim you're doing, I'm going to lose my mind. And in hindsight, when I see that poem that he wrote, I realized that he truly, I knew then, but he really was artistic, and it was really going somewhere. I didn't know it would be shared in his death, but I knew like he had a talent. So that's the memory that I wanted to share. The second part of that is turning my pain and my grief into a purpose. The night that Antoine was killed, I automatically made up my mind that I was never going to let anybody forget what happened to him. It didn't happen the next day. It didn't happen in a couple of days. From the moment that he was killed, I was telling everybody that was around me that they killed the wrong person's son. I had a lot of experience because I had worked for law enforcement for almost 14 years. So I knew what was good about policing, and I knew what was bad about policing. So I began to reach out to every politician, church, activist, political entity, you name it. I reached out to police officers that I used to work with, just trying to get some help. And what we did from that was we put together some legislation to be submitted to the House. We came up with some plans to change the conditions of the housing situation that not only myself and others around me were living in. It just really motivated me to take action on stuff that was bothering me for 23 years. So that's where I went with that. Thank you.
Thank you for that memory of Antoine's budding artistic talents. And I think it's so interesting that his death motivated you to make changes, not only with respect to police violence, but other things you said that had been bothering you that weren't right. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Ms. Palmer, would you like to go next?
Good morning. First of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here and to be in the presence of such beautiful mothers. A memory is so many, but I want to talk about how she loved to sing all the time and just would be loud and annoying. And so I could be in my bed, like, leave me alone. And here she comes crawling all over me, singing, and you'd be like, Brianna, just shut up. Like, I get out of here. And she would get louder and be everywhere, stomping around. And it just was insane because she would just, I don't care what mood you was in, she would light up the room. She would make you want to get up. And Lord knows I can't sing, but I'm gonna start singing with you because she done put you in this mood to just be up and moving around. And it doesn't matter who it was or where she was. She did that for everybody. So I don't know a person who didn't love her, you know. As far as the second part about changing this into purpose, I'm not sure that I fully have. I battle with it every single day. To be in this spot for this reason still is so unreal to me. To know that she didn't deserve this, that no one deserves to be killed in their own home for lies, just doesn't sit right with me. So I battle every single day trying to figure out what to do. So every day the purpose changed because every day I'm angry for a different reason. You think about something else they did and it pisses you off all over again. I remember thinking, though, you killed the wrong little Black girl and it wasn't okay with me. So I just battle with that every day. I battle with making sure people know her story, making sure that people know that this law enforcement team was absolutely wrong and they need to pay for what they did. And I try to remind people to not wait for it to happen to them. I think that it's not that we never want to get involved. So many of us don't know how to get involved. And then when it happens to you, it tears you apart, and you figure it out. There's no book for it. There's no words another person can tell you. You get up and you deal, even when you don't want to, even when you feel like the world is against you, your back's against the wall. You get up and you fight another day because your child can't.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for that beautiful expression of Brianna's singing. It's so interesting how things that maybe were annoying when our children were little, they're fond memories today, right?
Absolutely.
I think everyone has said that. Everyone's store memory has been a little annoying, but it brings back fond memories of our precious children. And I also appreciate, Ms. Palmer, how you point out it's not easy to get over grief. It's not like you've gotten over it at all. Yeah. But we're talking about what can we do? What have we done to deal with it as best we can and work toward something better? So I see Ms. Rice, you have joined us. We're happy to welcome you to the panel. And I don't know if you were here when I asked the first question, but we're talking about a special memory of our child and then how you turn your grief into whatever for a better world.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, hello everybody. I'm sorry for my tardiness. I'm moving around the country. I'm in Cleveland right now. It's good to be here. It's good to see everybody. I'm planning my son's 21st birthday. His birthday is June 25th. So it's kind of busy for me right now. So I'm glad to be here again. Excuse my tardiness. A memory of Tamir. Oh boy. It's a lot of memories. I mean, he was 12 years old. He just turned 12. He was only 12 for 5 months before, he was murdered. And I just remember my son just being a child. He was an all-American kid. He was a kid. He loved to play basketball and football. He liked to play soccer. He was on a soccer team in his school. He went swimming. It's like he mastered all of the sports. He was very athletic. He loved to play the drums. He was a drummer in the 6th grade. He was an artist. So I have a lot of memories of him. I can't just really narrow it down to one because I was still nurturing him and things like that. He would still get in my bed, hold me, mommy. Like at that age, some kids ain't asking to get in your bed and hold me and all of this and give me a kiss and stuff like that. Very big for his age, but he will help the smallest person, right? Just when he was in kindergarten, the teacher was like, I wish more can be like him. And I was like, you do? Oh, because he don't do the things he do for us at home when he coming in here to do. So I was just amazed that the kindergarten teacher said that. I was like, oh. So I just knew he was going to be an exceptional child. He was still watching TV shows like Big Comfy Couch. Just transitioning, still playing with Legos. Transitioning. Again, he was only 12 for 5 months. So Big Clifford the Red Dog. So still watching cartoons, still trying to keep positivity things, around him and things like that, giving him options and exposing him to positivity and things like that. Again, we seen what happened to a lot of the families like Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown And then we seen us on TV. So it was really a reality. It was so real for us because I was just watching all of this on CNN and everything. And it just seemed like it just a roller coaster and a rapidly happening so fast, a lot of things. So that's kind of how I kind of have memories of him, and memories of what's going on in this fight, this horrible group that we have to be in. This is a horrible group. I wouldn't wish this on my worstest enemy. You understand me? Some families, some families can't even get through this. So it's certain chosen ones that has been picked for a position, and it has to be the messenger and things like that. So that's what I could say about that. And we're just very fortunate that we can share our stories and hopefully encourage people to make change across this country. As far as me, what I've been doing, I created the Timmy Rice Foundation. And we service the inner city children with after school programming. I've been doing a lot, I've been speaking, I've been trying to support families here and there. But I just been being a voice for Tamir first and foremost, and just being a voice for the community. Just trying to make sure that I hold folks accountable. Because accountability is everything. Nobody wants to be accountable. I still don't have no indictment for my child's murder, and I don't know if anybody else does. So at the end of the day, where's the accountability coming in at? So again, it's just a lot of work that this country needs to focus on and work on, besides of the corruption and the toxicity across America. Let me just say that. So again, I just created the Timmy Rice Foundation, after school programming. Our inner city children don't have nothing to do. The school system is a failure. If your child is going to a public school, and it's just not fair. It's not fair to our children that they don't have the things that they need. That's why I was able to expose my children to different parts of society. When I was living in a suburban neighborhood, a rural neighborhood, I was able to expose them to different things and things like that, which is very subjective to the inner city community. Our children don't get as much. So I wanted to bring that to the inner city by purchasing a building in Cleveland, Ohio, which is going okay, and just developing programs and doing community events in the community. We did a self-care day giveaway where we got children's hair and got haircuts done and their nails and stuff for prom. We did a art workshop where I took some children to botanical gardens, and I had one of my good friends come in and teach the workshop. Did coat giveaways, art giveaways, like everything is free, right? So yeah, I just give back. That's our way of giving back in Cuyahoga County, and doing projects around the country like this and things like that. I hope y'all can see me okay. I am in my car, and I told Eli earlier, I said, I thought it was 3 o'clock, so please excuse me. I've got my times mixed up.
It's okay. We can hear you. We heard every word, and we can see you.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I wonder if that can be fixed. Are you all hearing that feedback?
Yeah, so Maria, you probably need to mute.
Oh yeah, please mute if you're not talking. Okay, great. So thank you for those memories of Tamir, and also all the work that you're doing. And as you said, this is a horrible group to have to be in, to be forced into. But we are so grateful that you 4 mothers have been able to speak out, and for being on this panel. As you said, many are unable for various reasons. And so it's a blessing to have you in this conversation. So what we want to move on to now is a discussion about what the precious lives of your children and the way they lost their lives tells us about our society, and then dig more deeply into the lessons you've learned through your work about how to organize, how to speak out. And I want to end with what your vision is of what a better world would be, what you're working toward. Okay, so we'll start with what lessons have you learned about really what's wrong with what the world is now? You know, what are you trying to change? And then looking at some lessons about the people that you've worked with, organizations. I want to talk about maybe some unknown people that we don't hear about in the news that are working for change, and then your vision. But let's first start with, what do you feel your children's precious lives teach us about how the world exists today, and including what we need to change about how the world exists today? So just, we can continue going through the order we did before, or, you know, if somebody wants to jump in, that's fine as well. But Ms. Cowley, if you wanted to begin, and again, we can go alphabetically, but feel free to jump in if you'd like.
Okay, so Maria, can you move forward back? So the feed. First of all, it's been wonderful listening to the other mothers talk, because I feel like we have a little bit of each other in all of our experiences, especially given our approach. I love the way Tamika pointed out the fact that she's like, she doesn't feel like she's done the thing, right? And because I feel that way. My daughter was murdered 10 years, this year made 10 years ago. And when things happen, and when there is a conversation, a national spotlight brought to those things as they happen, I see illogically that there is a thought that we would have the answer, when in actuality, we are the victim. So I don't have an answer for you. I can tell you how I feel about the situation. I can tell you how I feel about the people that are responsible. I can tell you about the people who also latched on to me and tried to get me to, push forward their agendas, and or stole my child's story and created a multi-million-dollar companies based off of it. And it looks one way, but it is another. I can tell you that there have been so many people, big and small, that have taken my passion for granted. Like, I know I want to make a change, and this is where I want to latch on to what Tamika said. I know I want to do this thing, right? But I don't have a word for it, because I find myself in a position where I didn't expect to be. And it wasn't an area that I had been focusing on previously, nor do I have the capacity to even learn it, really, because I'm so broken right now. But in everything that's dark, there comes a gift too, right? And so my experience is this. My gift became my ability to actually speak about what I'm experiencing, because I have always been a person that's been very self-aware, but afraid in the past. Like, I would leave any room I walked into knowing everybody, but I never walked in the room knowing everybody, if that makes sense. And it's really weird when you become the opposite, not because like you Beyonce and you could sing so well, but because of a death. So now you're processing death, and you're processing what these people actually want from you, or how they expect you to show up, and then you actually have the audacity to judge me in the middle of it too. And how is that working? Because, and then you got folks that's like upset at you because this thing is happening, as if you would prefer this thing over your actual child. And I'm saying a lot there because there's a lot to unpack, where it says, where the question is, what do I think my child's life says about the world we exist in today, where it says a lot in terms of her being so selfless. She very much was, you know, a better image of me. You know, we want our children to be better extensions of ourselves. She cared for everyone. She wanted as diverse of a friendship group as you could find. And she meant it, and she actively pursued it. She also knew who she was. She was an avid reader. Friends would be going out to party or whatever, but she would tuck away with a good book that it concerned me. Like, what are you doing? Like, I'm reading. You know, she got the bathroom. She in the tub with books. Like, she would leave and go sit like in uh, in the middle of parks and listening to the cars go past for reading a good book. That was who she was. She couldn't dance, but she was an absolute joy to watch as a majorette. And the funniest thing that you could ever imagine. So a lot of the response that came was because she did have friends, people she called a friend that was a gangbanger, because she was absolutely trying to get them to stay in school and do better. You know, figure out like how to swap, you know, rethink things or reframe things. She had friends that were straight. She had friends that were gay. She had friends that were white. She had friends that were Mexican. She had friends that all kinds of stuff, all different values. We would talk about so many different cultural things she had been exposed to because she had different types of friends, and to understand their values and then align them with the environment that they were actively actually working in. So her friends knew who she was, what she was about, and because she was so intentional in the way that she lived her life for those 15 years, only 15 years, that when she was murdered while being in a park on an affluential block, these homes, it was a Jack and Jill park, if you know what a Jack and Jill, like a bathroom is us. So it was a home on the side of the park, and it was enclosed and safe. And then on the block, these homes are millions of dollars, right? So this kid made the right decision, like, okay, we're gonna go over here in this area and hang out. But still, no matter what you do, the element has a different agenda. And even though she did what we said, like Samaria said, with my baby loving on me, you know, and I'm cuddling them up, I'm keeping them busy, I'm doing these things, there's still someone else with their agenda as well, right? And so she went to the park, she made the right decision. She even saw that this person had a gun, like I think that's a gun, and then takes off running. She got shot one time in the back, and the bullet traveled. And there ends her story. I was assured at that time that, oh, she'll be okay, get to the hospital. I had no idea like how where she had been shot, you know, how many times. The police officer was just on the phone with me, said, I know what death looks like, mother. You don't have to worry about it. You'll be good. Because I asked to talk to her. He said she's not available. I got to the hospital and my whole life changed. That to me says the uproar that came from that is like, whoa, this is a person that's undeserving. Not just my voice, but the voices of her friends, the voices of the staff, the voices of all the folks that she was associated with extracurricular activities and things of that nature. So I think that this says it could be you too. That's what my daughter's death symbolizes. It could be you. Yeah, we got our little box. We stay in a little box, right? Because we don't want those things to happen to our children. But it doesn't mean it won't occur. And so ergo, the point of erecting the foundation in her name and listening to the voices of young people and hearing what it is that they want and what it is that they need, because I think oftentimes we overshadow what their actual need is with what we think they need. And so those conversations become modified. I think that I had jotted something down. Samaria, you reminded me that my daughters, the people that were responsible for her death, there was a driver and a shooter. Just on March 31st this year, they overturned the conviction of the guy that was responsible for murdering my daughter. So therefore, we're in the process of possibly having to go through another trial all over again. So the re-traumatization of families is something that needs to be reconsidered. You know he's guilty, but then you say there's a particular piece of the right that might have been violated, and therefore we need to rethink he may be sentenced. But what about the re-traumatization of the families that you know he victimized? no, this person is guilty, for having committed a crime. There's so many laws out here that are in favor of the perpetrator or whatever. There's nothing out here that is screaming, hey, you've been victimized. Here are these things that you can have to make you better, to help you cope. All people think about is reentry, getting these people who have done something wrong and wrecked their lives, making sure that they stay on the right path. And they've asked me to participate in some of those conversations and some of those hearings. And I'm like, okay, but what about me? And since that has been a focus of mine, and now here it is 10 years later, I can more accurately speak to that. That is an area of focus that is in development under Hadia's Farms. So that is it for now. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a lot. Thank you so much. You're telling us more. I mean that in a positive way. You further the conversation a lot. And I think, yes, an important point. You need to unmute yourself though, Ms. Rice.
Oh, hello.
Yeah. Okay, you're back now.
Yeah. The thing for me is is anger, rage, no understanding to how a society continues to commit genocide in this country, and nobody is here to do anything about it. So what I would say is that, and I also been told that the House of Representatives and the House of Senate, those folks have to get out of office because they're under a different type of time. Number one, a lot of them is older, way older than you and I, and probably some of our grandmothers, and they've been there for years, and it's generational of seats being passed down from generational oppression, generational racism to keep this going on in America. I've been to the United Nations, and I don't know if any of the other mothers been to the United Nations, but it's just the documentation of what's going on in this country. You know what I'm saying? We are really being hunted and really have to endure PTSD for the rest of our lives living in this country. And it keeps happening and it keeps happening. So I understand what Tamika Palmer and Cleopatra, I'm sorry, the Cleopatra, yes, is saying in regards to they don't feel like nothing has been accomplished. I understand that. I don't feel like nothing has been accomplished either because we keep waking up to it. No, we keep waking up to it. How can any of us heal or they start to make right for the wrongings that they have done in this country in the 400, 500 years we've been oppressed already? Again, it's certain people in power in this country that needs to go sit down somewhere. And until that happens, America's never going to be nothing. It's an embarrassment almost to be an American because other countries looking at us like we dumb or something. So again, the powers that be have, again, it's designed this way again, and the powers to be continue to oppress. Talking in regards to the community, you have these county councils, you got city council, you got the mayor, you got all of these public officials that continue to oppress the city, continue to put the toxicity in the city, and continue to keep the city corrupt, right? So there can never be no real change across these cities, and I can name a few of them: Cleveland, Chicago, LA, even in Washington D.C. You know what I'm saying? It's just, how do we allow the city council to continue to make decisions for us, and we're not a part of the conversation? So that's what I have experienced in Cuyahoga County. I didn't go to my first city council meeting until my son was murdered. I didn't even know it existed. When you're growing up in poverty and things like that, in so and so quote the ghetto, we're not privileged to know about these things. It's only for a certain class and a certain type of people to attend these things, and those type of people really should be educating the whole community, not trying to be how can I say this, be like a slave master, slave or whatever, like a coon or whatever you want to call it. You know what I'm saying? I speak nothing but the truth. My mind is very militant, and I don't care nothing about what they got going on but Black liberation. And that's just where I'm at with it. We implemented a civilian oversight in the city of Cleveland. The city of Cleveland has been under 4 consent decrees. With this last 4th one, there's a federal judge that's overseeing it, because Cuyahoga County has a practice and pattern of using excessive force, right? So again, over the last 100 years, this consent decree has came here, meaning that the DOJ has came in here and kind of had to babysit the police department, right? So again, I don't understand how they keep allowing the DOJ to come in here and oversee their police department, meaning that they're corrupt and they're toxic in the city of Cleveland. The mayor don't make it no better. City council don't make it no better. County council don't make it no better. And it's just a trickle down of corruption to keep the citizens oppressed. I'm on my way to a county council meeting later today, and I'm on my way to a CPC meeting. So when I'm in town, I'm able to attend the meetings where I'm needed at, and just be a voice for the community, a voice for Tamir, and really just show resilience. I don't care nothing about them. I speak my mind, and I tell them that they corrupt. I tell them that they poison to the community. I tell them that we gonna vote them out, and that's what we usually do. So, implementing that civilian oversight, meaning that there's supposed to be, some type of accountability with community people that has experienced misconduct from the police department and things like that. Certain categories and calibers of that nature qualify them for it, and they're able to do recommendations to the mayor. And they're able to ask for subpoena power, independent investigations, and things like that. So I've been a part of that in Cleveland, Ohio, Citizens for Safer Cleveland. We got it on the ballot, and then I think every urban city across the country should have a civilian oversight. I know they got one in, I think I don't know if it's one in PA or not, Michelle, but it's also one in Richmond, Virginia, and things like that. And it's again San Francisco. I think it's one in LA and maybe Chicago. So again, I think it needs to be across the board citizens, a civilian oversight, which will it will also make county council and city council very uncomfortable, as they should be, because the funding that's went into the civilian oversight comes from the police budget and the mayor's budget, or whatever, however that go. And they got enough money to do it, okay? And also when you talk about defunding the police, and that's a big one for me. As far as defunding the police, I think there should be more programs for the police department in reference to maybe a professor from a college to come in and teach a course in the human mind sociology. Okay, because you're in a dangerous position as a police officer, but when do your common sense kick in and act like you a human being instead of riddling somebody's body? 137 shots in Cleveland, Ohio. In Akron, Ohio, 60 shots, Jalen Walker. Again, it should be some qualifications for the mind, and also just for them being aware of they're dealing with a delicate mind. You know, I mainly advocate advocate against the police, and for children, juvenile rights and things like that. When it comes to community violence, I'm kind of I'm still struggling with it because I can't understand why we still killing our own, or why we still shooting up the neighborhood and things like that. That's not in our essence to do. So again, it needs to be some programs put in place, and that's where county council and city council should come in place by implementing certain programs around in their neighborhoods, in their cities, in their wards, to get some of the negativity off of the streets and give these people, these children, men and women, something to do instead of pick up a gun and act out in a way that they don't know no better, right? Again, I could go on and on and on, and my philosophy is correct. I have created a formula for children to get out of school. You understand what I'm saying? I have 4 high school graduates, okay? And 2 of my children were in school when Tamir was murdered, okay? And they gave Tamir an honorary diploma, okay? They called me. So again, I know the formula that I created works. And it's just sad that Cuyahoga County, is still at an F in their school district, a D or F. And that's a public school district. So I wanted to create the Afro Central Culture Center, which again, we have a lot of programs for the children after school, and for them to stay out of trouble and just develop their natural born skills. Uh-oh. Hello?
No, we can hear you.
Well, why did my phone go black?
We can see you. Just so you know, we don't do nothing crazy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
The image changed a little bit. You're there.
Okay,
You're there.
my phone went black. Sorry about that. Okay, so I can see you all now. So I just wanted to say that, I hope I answered the question. Was there a second part?
No, that's good. That's good. You gave us a lot of information, and thank you for bringing in the issue of what we can do in terms of local government, state government, etc. Okay, so maybe you could mute your phone now because it does cause a little bit, but thank you so much. We heard you loud and clear. Okay, so now I don't know if Ms. Kenny or Ms. Palmer.
I'm gonna answer 2 and 3 so Tamika could go because I'm paying attention to the time here.
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
I'm gonna hit you with 2 and 3, and I'm gonna keep it simple. I made notes.
But let me just introduce the question because I agree with you. I was gonna move on to the next couple questions.
Go to 2 and 3 because I made notes on them because my memory isn't that great.
Okay, good. So we can put those 2 together, which are what are your experiences with coalitions and political movements in the name of Black lives? What are the promises and challenges? So the pluses and the minuses, the difficulties and the advantages. And then maybe you could also speak to what are the unnamed groups, like groups of mothers, families, and community workers that maybe we don't know about because the media hasn't really focused on them, and how can we highlight and support their work? Okay, so yes, please start us out on that.
Well, I'm gonna start with the first one. For me, it's the irony that Antoine was killed on Juneteenth. We all understand that Juneteenth was the day Union troops showed up in Galveston, Texas, to force the freedoms for the last enslaved individuals. And on this same day, my son was murdered by an organized gang that is supposed to provide us the same protections that were provided on Juneteenth. When you think about that, it really just makes absolutely no sense. And those decals that are on their car say that they are to protect and serve. But my son was murdered on Juneteenth. So every time somebody brings up Juneteenth, I always think about the fact that, oh, we got somewhere, but we still got a long way to go. And it's not just going to take us on this call or people that look like us. It's going to take people that don't look like us, don't involve us, don't have nothing to do with us. Like, it's going to take all of us. So it's just like, I feel like his death wasn't in vain, but there's still so much work left to do that we just got a long way to go. The other part of that question irritates me, honestly, because unfortunately for me, that political movement that you talked about has been just that. It's been a chance for politicians to move ahead, some people to increase their platform, some people to get profit. I mean, yeah, some people are still chanting others' names, but other people have taken their careers to the next level and they forgot how they got there. And that's my truth. Honestly, I always tell people you got to be careful of who you align yourself with, because just because it got Black in it doesn't mean it's for you. The only thing that I found to be true with Black in it for real is right here in this city in Pittsburgh, because the Pittsburgh chapter of Black Lives Matter is everything that it is supposed to be. That national chapter, that's a conversation that would take a whole nother platform.
Well, I
I don't went to war with them. And my truth is that unless you legally sued them or threatened to sue them, you receive no benefits from them, while they received all the benefits of chanting your son's name. Son, daughter, sister, cousin, they don't have no problem with putting your children on a shirt, a t-shirt, saying their name, whatever, and collecting the profits. That's my truth. Did I attempt to have a conversation with them? Absolutely. Did it go absolutely nowhere? Absolutely. But I also left that in God's hands and karma came around. And I feel no guilt. Like, I feel no shame and no remorse. Karma came around. What else? The other part of that was you wanted to know what was
so groups that maybe we haven't heard about in the media that you've worked with, or you could say more about the Pittsburgh group.
Fly-by-night groups come and go. You have a lot of people standing with you in the beginning. A lot of people promise you they're gonna be there to the end. And the truth of the matter is, the women that you see on this call, this is what you end up with. You end up with the same people that were there before this tragedy happened. Your circle either gets a whole lot smaller, even based on what you had coming into it, but it doesn't really get bigger. That support, all that stuff has faded over time. Like, I started a foundation for Antoine like 2 years after he was killed. And honestly, I do the work, but I haven't had a chance to put a lot into the foundation itself. I'm still out here speaking out, standing up, doing everything I can to affect change. But the energy that it takes to run a foundation, I applaud any mom who is doing it, because it's hurtful. It takes a lot when it's your pain. If it was a relative or a distant friend, that's different. But when it's your child, it takes a lot. And there has only been, and I say this all the time because it is my truth, there has only been one nonprofit that has rocked with me from day one to day end, and that's One Hood. We done traveled together. We done submitted legislation together. They give me grace and space. They helped me do the 7th-day retreat. We went to Louisville when Breonna was killed and showed up down there. Like, other than that, honestly, I can't give you another organization. And here's the thing, I wouldn't give any other mother in this situation false hope or lie to you. I can't tell you how to plan this out. I can't tell you who's good and who's bad. All I can tell you is what worked for me. And the only people that are still standing after 5 years, because Antoine's anniversary death date was yesterday, has been the same organization that has been there from day one. And that's my truth. Tamika, I will gladly let you have some time here.
Well, you know what, and that is so important for us to hear, though. And we should shout out One Hood, the organization you said has been standing beside you. So it can happen. We want to learn the lessons. What can we learn from this? What are they doing that's right, that we should be supporting? So Ms. Palmer, if you want to take up that challenge.
Oh my God. Y'all starting some stuff now.
Yeah,
when we get to talking about this, y'all starting some stuff. I agree. I echo everything she said, and I wasn't even gonna say any names, but like she said, Black Lives Matter. I don't fool with them. To each his own. I'm gonna say I don't fool with Louisville. They did some things, they told some lies, you got in this situation, you don't know, you will never understand the people that will show up and take advantage of you while you are on your knees screaming. People will show up for their own personal gain. I would have never thought I would have to fight people about my daughter's name or her image or her, this is a person. I had a kid when I was a kid, I didn't know where the world was going at that time. You know what I'm saying? And to know that these people showed up out of nowhere to gain money, to do all this stuff was sickening. And I would have never in my life thought to even do anything like that to anyone. And then she talked about having people who stood there. And I myself have a group. It was Until Freedom. They showed up when nobody was there. They showed up when I couldn't get anybody to listen to my story. And to this day, they have still rocked with me. Like she said, I done been places with them. I done stood some fights. They continue to show up. And that's amazing because you got people who are doing the work with so much going on in their own personal lives. And you got to be grateful for that. But again, like she said, when the lights go away and the glory of your story starts to pass, you end up with the people on this panel. You know what I'm saying? It's us who continue to check in with each other when we can, why we can. Like she said, I have a foundation as well, but it's hard for me to do the work because I'm still fighting my own fight. I've had so many friends just this year lose their own kids, and their story's not recognized because the police didn't kill them, but it doesn't take away. A loss is a loss. It doesn't matter how you lose your child, you got the same hurt that I got. I don't know that your hurt's gonna be any different than mine. I don't care how my child would have been killed. I am dying inside every day. And it's crazy that you don't know those stories. Even with Brianna, occasionally you would hear the Sandra Bland stories or, Tatiana Jefferson. But those stories went away so fast, you couldn't even blink. You didn't really understand that this was happening to women. You didn't understand that this was happening to kids. I remember growing up, not that this was any better, gang related, women and children were safe. There's no rules to this world no more, and the people that are supposed to protect and serve are the people who are killing us. And Miss Rice said the craziest thing that I've been saying forever, that I feel like we're a part of the Hunger Games. We are being hunted every single day. And then it started out with our Black and brown men. Now they're killing our women, they're killing our children. We're not safe anywhere in this world. And to echo something else she said about the review boards, we have one as well. But you got to be careful with that, because what's happening is they're putting the people they want on those review boards. So we really still ain't being heard. You know what I'm saying? Our issues still ain't being addressed, because you got these people in here pretending to be with us, pretending to care about what's happening to us, when all along they're all about whatever they were sent in there to be, to quiet those people down, or make them stop talking about defunding the police. And one of the real issues is getting rid of qualified immunity. As long as the police can stand behind that, they will continue to fucking kill. Excuse me, they will continue to kill us, because there's no accountability. Why change bad behavior if you're gonna slap me on the wrist and send me back out there? So I could go on forever, because it again pisses me off so bad. But to echo the other women that are losing their babies, whose stories don't get told, I try and stand up for them. I try and be there with them. I try and show up for them, because I remember what it felt like for nobody to be saying Breonna's name. I remember what it felt like for the police to try and sweep what they did under the rug. I remember showing up and being told to go to the hospital, that she was at the hospital. And I remember sitting there for 2 hours to find out they had never even heard of Breonna. They never had, there was no recollection of who she was, or her even being on the way. I stood outside for 12 hours for a detective to come over and say, and I'm screaming, "Where is my daughter?" And for him to look me dead in my face and it's like, she's still in the apartment, as if it was nothing. I'll never forget that feeling. Yeah, I could go on forever.
That's all right. You know, it's hard to summarize or capture what you all have been saying, but one thing that is so clear is that we need to listen to your voices. I think one message I'm hearing is that people will take your grief and the horrible killing, murder of your children, and not listen to you about what you want done. And I'm also grateful that you mentioned that there are organizations, groups that have done that, that have listened to you, that have been by your side. Because I don't want to leave with the feeling that there's nothing we can do. Do you know what I mean? That there is a way that we should be approaching your experiences, the murders of your children, your voices. But that's what we need to listen to, what you are saying. And I'm grateful that you're here and that we can hear you in this particular venue. So we have, I don't know if there are any questions that are coming in the chat. Okay, so far I'm getting a message that there have been no questions, but comments of affirmation. I'm going to read one of them. Someone says, "You mothers are so vital to our own collective memory, mothering and making. Deep gratitude for sharing your pain, purpose, and joy with us. This dialogue is sobering and life-giving at the same time." Another says, "Thank you all for sharing how your grief has changed you and compels you. Thank you for speaking out against violence and demanding and creating the world we deserve. Thank you for extending your care and advocation to your communities in a world that lies to us, that as long as we say the right thing, wear the right thing, and do the right, and go to the right places, that we'll be safe. It could happen to anyone. And so we need to all be in this together." Another person says, "These women are the pillars of strength, grace, and integrity. It is our honor to learn from them this morning. Such beautifully strong and inspiring women." So I agree with all of those words. We're so blessed by your words this morning. So I wanted to conclude our discussion with a couple things. One is your vision of what world we should be working toward, what kind of world is possible. And maybe we can also close with each of you telling the audience something they can do. You know, I think we got the message of what many people are doing is wrong and we need to stop it. But is there something for those, like the people whose words I just read, who sincerely want to support you, want to work with you toward a better world? What can we do? So maybe we can go around, whoever wants to jump in. What's your vision? What is possible, and what can people who are listening and will be listening, because this is recorded and will be shared with the public, what can we do? Ms. Rice, it looks like you want to jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just think that honestly, I think the police department needs to be abolished, and it needs to be created to serve you know, the really bad people, the murderers, the rapists. You know, a rapist get a slap on the wrist while somebody that sold a dime bag of weed get 20 years. So again, society is messed up all around, right? They need to get those House of Representatives and the Senate up out of there, okay? And with all of that, if it has to be police officers, they need to have insurance policies just like the doctors, just like the teachers, just like anybody of profession that has insurance policies where they can be held accountable, not only through financial accountability, but just to kind of ruin, do not allow them to be police officers no more. With if they gotta shoot and things like that, I would say $1 million a bullet. So, you know, my thing is, if you want to be a police officer in this country, you need some type of insurance policy on top of whatever else they require. And instead of getting 50 hours of gun training, maybe you could get 10 hours of gun training and let some other hours be used for something else. Again, with the corruption that's in the system, that's in the police department, again, it needs to just be abolished, and qualified immunity needs to go out the door. Thank you for that. And so I vision, hopefully one day it will be a prison created for corrupt police officers and they all can rot to death. And or when it comes to indictments, they need to start indicting some of these police officers, and not for no 18 months. I mean, you're destroying people's lives, you're changing people's DNAs up, and society has created this tension in America. So it's a lot that folks can do. Go back to your rural countries, the suburbs, wherever you're all from, pass it around that in order for America to change, you need to get some of those rich white folks up out of office that's up there serving no purpose. Go ahead and enforce the George Floyd law. You know what I'm saying? They still ain't did that. They up at the Black Caucus still waiting to approve that. What's taking so long? Ceasefire on Black and brown lives. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. And create some programs for the community can do something, then pick up a gun. And with these mass murders and these gun shootings that's happening around this country, who's going to be accountable for it? The NRA needs to be demolished. They need to go away because they ain't serving nobody. They ain't helping nobody with no type of gun laws. And, you know, who's going to be accountable for them children's death if they don't kill them in trying to save them? You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot that can be done in this country. Ban assault weapons. Okay, we civilians, what are y'all doing with army gear over here anyway? So again, it's a lot that can be done in this country. When is it going to start? That's the question. Because we way behind. We like 500 years behind and counting. So that's what I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Powerful words. And who wants to jump in next?
I will, if allowed.
Thank
Okay.
you, Kelly.
Yeah, so I want to say this lady touched on a few different things, and one being, I'm here, but my daughter was murdered by a little black boy, two of them, and it's it's disheartening for a parent like myself to not see people as upset when little black boys kill little black girls or little black boys kill little black boys, because it is disheartening. It is directly in your neighborhood. You don't need a mayor, you don't need an alderman, you don't need those people to help facilitate man in the block, or become figuring out how we can make our own communities better. Because at one point in time in Samaria, I think you touched on this, we were not always this hateful as a community. And so somehow we've allowed the narrative to come off of what is needed within our community, by our community, for our community, to what other people are doing to our communities. What lessens the blow when mass shootings are being televised, but we're not looking at the number of deaths that are occurring every day to little black boys, little white boys, little black girls, little white girls. I mean, it's happening out here. We're also failing our young people by not giving them a sense of protection in their own communities, and by not thinking about how someone who can't buy a loaf of bread can buy a gun and bullets. How is that possible? It virtually isn't. So it's a bigger issue. It's an even bigger issue than people are willing to admit. There is something happening out here, and it is to the detriment of the Black and Brown communities, but it's also highly, there's an activity that's being incentivized, because right now there are so many people making so much money off of the deaths of people. I'm not even just going to limit it to young people, just people, for gun crimes. You think about one day, if there was just one day where there was absolutely no crime, no shootings, how many folks would be out of work? Who benefits from hospitals, doctors, nurses? You got the police themselves. Think about the impact that the lack of violence will have on so many professions. So you cannot say that there isn't money to be made off of the issue of violence that we're constantly highlighting. But what you can also admit is that there's something that needs to be done that isn't being done. We're prioritizing our right to bear arms over our right to live. Which is first? Do I have a right to live, or do I need to go read this declaration that says I have a right to carry this weapon, and then I have a right to be irresponsible with that weapon? I have a right to put your life at risk with this weapon? What is that? Meanwhile, we're still not really able to vote. Like we as the Black people who are being murdered still have to pay attention to what's happening out here and make sure that our rights are still relevant. So it's so ridiculous. Like the whole setup, it gets so deep. We lost our children. Yep. We've gained our voices. Yep. This is what we're doing. Not because we want to, but because it seems very necessary, because there's somebody out there that can't speak up and they need a voice, right? And so all of us, the four women on this panel today, have all said that we speak up for other people who have not been given an opportunity to either be brought into a conversation or haven't figured out how to navigate the grief in order to properly communicate. And I'm saying properly because you want to pose the proper picture of what exactly is happening. So I mean, it's so much. I'm with them. I just think it's bigger than what people want us to believe. And I think an audience like this, a lot should come from you guys studying the communication that's coming from the four of us, as well as all of our experiences. You asked about organizations, there are a ton of organizations out there. Normally, 9 times out of 10, the ones that's doing the work are broke as hell. So if you really want to find people that's doing the work, they're the people that can't fill out the application because they don't have certain experience or they don't have an endowment. You're probably looking at a few of those organizations right now from us, because I can tell you my organization is broke as hell. still out here trying to do the work, but there's this other larger light because of her death and sparking the Wear Orange movement. But that's not coming to Ideas Promise. Our organization's Ideas Promise. So there's a whole lot that we miss out on, the people that want to do work, because there's a lack of qualification, there's a lack of resources and funding, because everybody wants to get paid in a space where you don't have any money. You just have, the voice, you have the ideas, and you have, the other stuff that's going on. So if you want to help, there are a lot of different ways that these organizations can be helped, and our voices can continue to be uplifted. So I think that's all I have. Sorry, guys.
No.
I wanted to say
Thank
one
you
thing.
for that.
I wanted to say one thing to that, Cleopatra. That was very great. It's the government, y'all. We got to get these governors out of these states, because up here in Cuyahoga, up here in Ohio, in the capital is Columbus. Mike DeWine has approved for people, anybody to get a gun at 18 with no gun permit. Like, what are you doing? So it's setting our community up for failure, period. You're gonna allow 18-year-olds to get guns with no permit?
Our bordering state just did the same thing over in Indiana. All you have to do is have a license. They don't care. You can.
That's not gonna work. So if anyone's listening that can get to their governor in their state, get rid of the governor. He has to go. In Florida, Cuyahoga County, Ohio, and whatever state, get y'all governor up out of there, because these governors be ruining what's going on. Let me just say that. I just wanted to say that. That's all.
Hey, generation, because the generations behind us are more politically active, they're more socially active, they are so more involved than what we were. So the only thing that I ask is that anybody and everybody that can invest in these generations behind us, that change isn't going to come in my lifetime. I understand that, but it will come in somebody else's, and we really have to invest in this younger generation. All of us lost our children way too soon. Like way too soon. And we can envision what they would have been, but we really don't know. So the best thing we could do is put hope and energy into these generations behind us. And all I ask is that anybody who's listening, if there's a kid out there that you could help, support, an agency that's working with younger gen, give it to them, because they're going to be the ones that make a difference. And that's it.
Oh, that was short and sweet and powerful. I agree with you. As a teacher myself, I see so much hope in my students, and I agree with you. I have to pass it on to them. I've worked for decades, but the hope is in this next generation. I agree. Ms. Palmer, do you want to give us some closing words?
I'll keep it short and sweet as well. I echo everything these women have said. But to say that, again, don't wait until it happens to you and your family. There's so many ways to get involved. Like, you don't necessarily have to be in the streets protesting. We need people making calls. We need people writing letters. It is just a number of ways. It is so many ways for all of us to be involved. You just have to figure out what your way is, and that's okay, because we don't need 100 people in the streets. We don't. It's so much work for us, and there's no leaders, right? We are all trying to get there together. We are all trying to get the same common goal completed. So we don't need a bunch of people coming in here trying to be the leader, trying to tell everybody how to do this thing or none of that. Just learn your space, share that what you've learned with other people. Just continue to spread the word, continue to get people out there. And like they said, this generation behind us, they got a fire under them that is something different. In my time, I know I've heard about protests, and I watched it on TV. They actually got to be out here in these streets. They got to experience some stuff that I never got to experience growing up. And they took over, and they did a job that I think most of the things I learned came from them. So just get involved. Just know that. And if you don't, you really have no room to complain about what's going on in the world. You can't talk about how the rest of us are out there doing it, or how radical some of us may be, or we're out there though, and we're doing it. So until you get out there and until you figure your niche or your way, don't come for us at all.
Well, thank you for that. So if there aren't any last words to say on the panel, everybody has been so outspoken and eloquent and moving and powerful. Again, I have been so honored to be among you. I echo what we heard from the chat about how powerful your words are and how much we admire you. I heard in the end that although all of you have had experiences of organizations and people that left you, did not, and even used you, and your children's stories, you also have experiences with those who stood beside you and have supported you. And we want to be on that side of support. The importance of listening to people who have been actually impacted by whatever it is you are working toward. I truly believe in that. In this case, children who have been killed by violence, state violence, and also in Ms. Crowley's case by community violence. And we want to listen and support whatever it is we're working on, the people who have actually been affected directly by it. We shouldn't be using people, we should be serving people who have experienced the harms that we want to end. I heard working with changing those in power through our vote, through our letters, through our calls, through our protests. Supporting the people who are doing the work, the foundations. The mothers here have foundations that they have mentioned. Support those foundations. They've mentioned some organizations that have supported them. Support them. You can find the ones that are doing work in your community and support them with your efforts, with your money, as Ms. Crowley said. They all need financial support as well as other ways we can support them. So I really appreciate, and I know everyone in the audience and the future audience appreciates all the work you're doing and your words today. Thank you so much for the wisdom and encouragement and inspiration that you've given us. And I just wish and pray for you all the blessings that can flow to you and the work that you're doing in the name of your children. Did you want to say something, Ms. Palmer?
I do. I'm sorry. I just want to say to the other mothers, if I can be of service to any of you, I am here. Reach out to me. I'm always in your corners.
Thank you so much.
Love, man.
Man, I love and appreciate all of y'all. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you for giving us this platform too. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you to Dr. Dancy and his center. And yes, I think one of the most beautiful points is that you all have stood by each other. And we appreciate that. Ms. Rice,
Yeah,
we have 1 minute, so if you.
if it's any organizations out there that's truly about saving life and things like that, I would like to know, how do you get an indictment on these police officers as they continue to support us and come around and things like that? And I was very boisterous in having conversations with a lot of people in the movement, but I want to know, how do you get an indictment? You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of, if anyone could show us how to get an indictment for the death of our children, that's kind of where I'm at when it comes to accountability and things like that.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for that last word. So accountability is also a theme that came up. How do we get accountability for the harm that was done? And how do we work toward a world where we end that harm from happening in the future? So on that note, again, thank you so much for your participation in this forum. I can't thank you enough, and I'm truly honored to have been able to engage with you, and blessings and peace to you. Thanks so much. So I will turn this back over now to our MC, Chris Wright, to continue our program this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts, and thank you to each of our panelists. I just want to close this out quickly, but I do want to say that it was both an honor and a privilege to be able to sit and listen to you all's stories, perspectives, to listen to your critiques, to listen to your vulnerability and anger. And I appreciate how everyone spoke truth to power. I appreciate how everyone was also very candid about groups who claim to help and do not. And I want our audience to take away the fact that this can happen to any of us. We are not safe and we are not free. And we must continue to study and support and fight in whatever way that looks like for us where we are standing. I want to transition us into our lunch hour and a half. I encourage everyone to refer back to the agenda, which should be located either in your email, in the chat, or at our website, q.pitt, that's pitt.edu. We'll log off of the current link and log into the Lunch Vibes link so we can hear more sounds from DJ PVO. And when we get back, we'll meet back at 1 p.m. Be sure that you refer back to the agenda and log into the Abolition Now link. When we return, we'll have another deep conversation and dialogue between Sabina Vaught and Erica Miners. So we'll be seeing you all back shortly, and thank you.
DJ PVO, positive vibes only. Drums, please.